Have you seen The Flash? Or was it just me? We're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of the Geek Watch Podcast.
This is the Geek Watch Podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 192 of the Geek Watch Podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
So, a couple of things we've been watching recently, and we'll definitely talk about that, and we'll also have to talk a little bit of news. We will, again, discuss the writer's strike, which is now on week 8.
Wow.
So, it's still going on. But today is a very interesting day. We're recording on Thursday, and the end of the month is tomorrow, and the end of the month is when the SAG-AFTRA contract runs out.
Right.
President Fran Drescher of SAG-AFTRA, she's been basically saying that it looks like they have a really good chance of getting a deal, but a lot of actors have said, yeah, we're ready to strike at any moment.
Right.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. We already know that the Directors Guild cut their deal, and they got streaming settled, and that's a big sticking point. That and AI is a big sticking point for the Actors Guild for obvious reasons. And if they get those concessions, then what does that mean for the writers?
Right.
What's going to be interesting about that situation is it's going to be good for the writers and it'd be bad for the writers if a deal's cut. It's good for the writers because you're not going to be able to get rid of this whole idea about being fairly compensated for streaming and for AI. You gave it to everybody else. So it's going to be really difficult to
justify.
Yeah, to argue, we're not going to give it to you guys. But the other problem is the writers, their backs are against the wall because obviously they can't concede to that either. There's not going to be a place where they can say, they're just not going to give us these concessions. We might have to take a half measure or some sort of a deal, not exactly what we wanted, but they can't do that. The writers are either going to get what they asked for, or this strike is going to go on for a while. And it's already affecting the geek world, obviously, because a ton of Marvel movies have been pushed.
Yep.
And we're talking about 2024 and 2025. It's crazy. One of the things I hadn't considered, but it's really going to affect Deadpool 3 because, and I hadn't considered this, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. What makes the Deadpool movies great has always been Ryan Reynolds is hilarious.
Right.
But a lot of the stuff that he does is stuff he improvs on set.
Right, so he can't change anything until...
Right, so he can't improv. So if it's not in the script right now, he can't do anything. Yep. And that was the joy, really, of those movies. And I feel like that if you don't let Ryan Reynolds riff while he's playing that role, it's not going to be as good. And there's been some questions anyway about, they're going to make it an R-rated movie, but is it going to be a Disney R-rated movie? How much is Ryan Reynolds going to be allowed to do? And, of course, the smart move is let him do whatever the hell he wants. Because it works. It works.
It obviously works.
Yeah, it works really well. But the writer's strike is really starting to mess things up. And this was a discussion I got in with our friend of the show, Kevin Pauly, about the whole writer's thing, about if you're not in the WGA, you're not under that union, does that mean you can write a script? And I'm like, well, yeah, you can write a script if you want, but the moment the writer's strike is over and the Writers Guild says those guys are
Gabs,
you don't get to work with,
crossing the picket line.
Yeah, so you'd basically be blackballed forever. You'd never be able to join the Writers Guild. Anytime you tried to work somewhere or sell a script, the WGA would be ringing them up on the phone and going, you can't work with them. And then that's it. You're done. But how long does this go before people are like, the WGA is over and it doesn't matter anymore? And then people start scrambling for jobs that don't pay a whole lot and a heck of a lot less than they do now. But what are you going to do? You're going hungry. And, of course, as we are both West Virginians and we have seen what happened to the coal unions, we know how this story is going to end if the union crumbles. If the WGA isn't able to get those concessions, which they can't back off from it. They have
All or nothing.
It's going to be an all or nothing deal. And this is going to be, again, it's going to be very rough. It's going to be very difficult. It's not that this is going to be the depressing episode, but it's going to be a while before we get to some good news, because you look at what's going on with DC right now. And we will talk about Flash, because you and I both saw it.
Yes.
We were some of the few who saw it. Black Adam did better than this movie, and that shocked me. And it dropped like 78% the next week. A horrible bomb.
Yep.
Of epic biblical proportions. So bad, in fact, the new Spider-Man took its #1 spot back, which that very seldom happens in movies. But yeah, it's...
Yep.
And there's a lot of weird stuff about the Spider-Man movie, and we can talk about that as well. But across the Spider-Verse, 100 animators quit during the production because you had producers and the director going in and saying, hey, you need to make a change for me. Change this here. Now, the problem, of course, is that it's not just as easy as going in and changing a couple of frames.
No.
You have to redo
All
everything.
from the beginning, yes.
And then you have to recompile, and that's a big, long process. And there was a whole lot of crunch where it's like, no, we need you to change this little thing in this one frame. And yes, it means that you're going to have to redo this entire scene and recompile it, but you don't have a lot of time to do it. That was enough for a lot of people to go, I can't work like this. Here's something about the new Spider-Man movie, and I didn't realize this because I've only seen it once, but apparently, if you see this movie more than once, you're going to notice some things, because this is actually a multi-universal movie. Because not every person sees the same movie.
Really? That's interesting.
The plot doesn't change. There's not anything major. But some of the reactions, some of the things that are said, apparently aren't the same depending on when you see the movie or what theater.
Mess with people who already have the Mandela effect about old movies, and this is going to mess with people.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
great. I love it already.
Yeah, it was funny because I had heard rumors about this, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like maybe that's Mandela effect. That sounds like one of those
Right?
things. But somebody posted it on Twitter, and an official word came back I was wondering how long it would take for people to notice this. For example, Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, there's a scene where he wraps his arm around Miles Morales' neck, and in one version of the movie he says, I have trapped you with my musculature. And in another version he goes, I call this a sleeper hold.
Okay.
But there's a bunch of these. And so they're still trying to figure out if this is a matter of, are there like two versions of the movie where they're all like this way or the other way, or if there's, some people are saying there's dozens of versions of it. So this one we use A, and A. The next one it's B, B, and B. This version of it's A, B, A.
Yeah.
So you get all these weird combinations. And we talked about this before about...
Disney does that with some of their movies. Okay, I know for one of them, in a movie that was shown in America, a kid was eating something that they thought was gross, and it was broccoli. But apparently, like in Asia, all kids love broccoli, so they changed it to green peppers.
Yeah.
And in one version, it was hockey, and then in other version, it was hockey. They changed it to soccer. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And you remember the movie Clue?
Yes.
Yeah. And of course, they had the different endings. When it played in the theaters, there were different endings. So it's something that's similar, but apparently there are different versions of this movie. And depending on the time of day in the theater you see it in, depends on what version of it you'll see.
Oh, that is fantastic.
I think that's great. But then I think about how much extra work was that to do?
Yeah.
And it's like already they're saying 100 people walked out, and we got the next one coming out, and it's supposed to be next year. And I saw this online. It looked like there was a letter written by Sony saying, we're going to have to postpone this for an entire year because of stuff that's happening. Yeah, but there's some misspellings in this official news press release. And so maybe this is a joke.
Right, it's not
or this
real.
is a prank. So that's
It's
the
a troll.
It's a troll.
Yeah.
So that's the possibility. But let's talk a little bit about Flash. We won't go into a whole lot of spoilers, even though I actually don't have... I think we are going to go into spoilers. We'll just say we're going to do spoilers on this one because I think at this point, if you haven't seen it, you're not gonna.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of debate as whether or not you should go see it or not, because, of course, the Ezra Miller thing. And I wasn't altogether eager to see the movie, but we have a podcast. So I went to the $5 theater on Tuesday to see it.
Uh-huh.
And so what did you think overall about the movie? Did you like it?
Going in and hearing all those things that people have been saying, it's the best comic book movie of all times and stuff like that, I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would never give it that moniker. I may not even put it in the top 10, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. There were so many great things that I just loved. I don't know what he called it, the bowl or something. And I'm like, oh, it's a zoetrope. And
Right.
that was really interesting, the way that, that they looked at their time stream and being circular, which is what the Flashpoint is.
Right.
I think it was interesting that they took the core concept of Flashpoint Paradox and were able to use that and went this way with it, just reworking the story to fit this way. And then, of course, I love getting to see all the circles, all the planets, and I think everyone has to just cry their eyes out when they see that. Seeing George Reeves
Yeah.
and his Flash with the helmet, and Christopher Reeves and Helen Slater standing there together, and of course Nicolas Cage fighting a giant spider.
A Thangarian snare beast.
Right? It was just God.
Which, of course, unless you're a Kevin Smith fan and you've seen,
Yes.
his, you might not know.
You don't know if you don't know the story. And Tim Burton and they had to please the toy companies. We have to make a movie and be able to make toys out of it. And
Right.
If Geek Watchers, if you haven't heard the Kevin Smith Superman story,
Oh, yeah.
go listen to it.
It's hilarious.
It's hilarious. It's fantastic.
And what a punchline at the end, which we will not spoil,
Won't
but
spoil.
yeah.
But yeah, when he's explaining his Superman movie to someone, and he's talking
Yeah.
about Kal-El, and then the producer
who?
says, "Who's Kal-El?" And collectively, the geek world goes, "Oh,
Yeah.
why are you making a Superman movie?" But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's not perfect.
Yeah. For example, the CGI.
Yes,
There was a lot
especially with Kara.
Yeah.
Kara deserved better than that.
Yeah.
And I love that actress. I love her portrayal, being locked away and then suddenly being woken up, and we know, get her to the sun. We're all hearing in our heads, get her to the sun,
Oh, yeah.
and really beautiful moments there.
Yeah. But I will definitely say that, and I agree with you, that it probably the fact that you had everyone, including James Gunn, praising this thing to the moon, you were like, oh,
My expectations were a little too high.
yeah. And that was part of the danger of it. And I didn't buy into the hype that much, but I understand why James Gunn said the things that he said. He's getting ready to take the wheel for Warner Brothers and DC, and you don't want to have to start from a cold stop. But I really feel that there's a point where you can support a movie, but if you go too far, it's going to mess with your credibility. I think that might have hurt James Gunn. And to be honest, I think as far as Flash, the amount of money that this movie is going to lose.
Yeah.
The only DC movie I could think of that could possibly have lost more money than this has to be the Snyder Cut of the Justice League. Because there was no way that was making money, period. Mm-hmm. And they spent all kinds of money on that. And they didn't really have this money to lose. But I figured that Flash was going to have a problem. I thought maybe there might be a little bit of momentum just for the fact that it was praised to the moon. I thought there would be at least be some momentum the first week, and then things would start to drop off. But no, it was dead on arrival, and that shocked me. Not because I've heard some people say this is the end of the series, and so people are not that invested because they're like, it doesn't matter what happens in this movie because it's not going to carry on to the next cinematic universe. And of course, I'm thinking, I don't think the second part of Dune is going to do badly because they're like, well, it's not going to matter.
End, yeah.
It's the end.
We're coming to the end, right?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter what happens in that movie because we're not getting another one. And maybe there is a little bit of that mentality when you're watching superhero movies. But yeah, right out the gate, it just did not do very well. And the problem is the next two movies are Aquaman 2 and Blue Beetle.
Right.
Now, they're saying some decent things about Blue Beetle, although the thing is, you have to really be a fan to know that character. And the other thing I've been hearing, there have been some early showings of Aquaman. There was some test viewings, and people have been walking out of the movie.
Oh, no.
Not people. They're saying people have literally been walking out of these viewings. And so that's not good.
No.
And of course, you have a situation where you have another controversial actor in this movie. And even if, like, say, Blue Beetle is amazing, is it even going to be given a chance? That's going to be the question. And how do they recover from it? Because after that, then you do the reboot and you start doing new films. And we already talked about it. There's going to be like a new Superman movie with new actors. And
Right. They announced those.
yeah, and they're doing Brave and the Bold, but then everything else is like deep cuts, which James Gunn does really well. We can look at Peacemaker and The Suicide Squad, which thing was, The Suicide Squad was a great movie. Did it make a lot of money? No. Did it tank? Yeah. Was that James Gunn's fault? Not really, because if you take a movie and you just put it on HBO Max, yeah, that's going to kill the box office. Of course it's going to. But Warner Brothers has had a lot of bad luck when it's come to this particular group of movies. Now, some of them have made some decent money, but I could count on one hand, a shop teacher could count on one hand, how many of those movies were actually watchable. The first Wonder Woman, I would put in that list. The second one, I wouldn't. And I like the first Shazam, although the second one totally tanked again. Black Adam bombed.
Right.
Not as bad as Flash, but Flash didn't do so well. And you're starting to wonder exactly what's going on. It's like the movies that we know are coming up are basically, there are kind of comic book movies, but they're not a part of this new DC universe.
Correct.
We've got the second Batman movie coming in, that world that's its own, and then we're getting a second Joker movie, which
World of its own, too.
yeah, it's its own thing. So those movies are not really going to help this new cinematic universe. And the movies that we got coming up don't sound like they're going to be much of a help.
Right.
And everybody right now, all they're talking about is superhero fatigue. Marvel's starting to have the same problems. And part of it, too, is you see that they're starting to back off from release dates, putting things on Disney Plus, because they're wanting to hold back on not putting something, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It took them a little bit longer to put it out there. And they're saying that when the Marvels comes out, it may be months before it shows up on Disney Plus, because they're trying to encourage people to go back into the theaters.
Right.
The last few movies, they've been decent, but when was the last billion-dollar film that they've done? It's been a while. And this idea of superhero fatigue, I get it. They really do need to find a new breakout star. And I'm not sure who that's going to be right now. But the movies that we have coming up, they're, like I said, they're not the big, huge blockbuster films, at least not in the beginning. There's some deeper cuts in it, and like the Thunderbolts, and to some degree, the Marvels. But the Marvels is going to be the next movie. And that's the thing. It's like it really needs to do really well. And I'm wondering about how well it is going to do. It might be, to some people's minds, a niche movie. And that's going to be the question, because there needs to be like a huge blockbuster again to get the ball rolling. And I don't see a movie coming up that's going to do that necessarily. Right. I don't know what that's going to be. And I've already seen a poster for the new season of Loki, and that's got me excited.
Good.
But that's going to be, that again is going to be the question. What gets the ball rolling again? Does anything get the ball rolling again? Or are we just seeing the heat death of superhero movies for a while? Is this going to be, because I don't think it'll completely go away. I think it might, if it does wind up dying down, maybe for a few years we don't get anything, and then, it may wind up coming back.
Right.
But yeah, as of right now, especially with the writer's strike, the pressure is on, and it's going to be really difficult. again, it's like a lot of the Marvel movies have been postponed, delayed. Depending on how long the writer's strike is, you may wind up pushing them again. So it might not even be a matter of people just not going to see them. There may not be anything to see for a while. But since we are talking about Marvel and we're talking about Disney Plus and TV, do have to talk about the first 2 episodes of Secret Invasion.
Oh, how was that?
So I have mixed feelings about it right now.
Okay.
I will say. They're definitely playing this up as Marvel's Andor. And I don't know if you saw any of Andor, but...
A little.
Yeah. Andor is like a slow burn, more character-driven Star Wars series. And part of that is there. But there have been a couple of little controversies. The opening sequence, they used AI to create.
Ooh.
And a lot of people are like, oh, do we want to go down that road? Now, of course, they use the AI just to make things look weird, because when you do the AI...
People get 7 fingers and things. Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of weird, semi-abstract things that happen when you use AI, and that was what they were going for.
Uncanny Valley.
Yeah. So there was a lot of that stuff going on, and AI is one of these things right now that people are like really iffy about.
Right.
You have aliens in this movie. My apologies if I'm spoiling it, but there's Skrulls involved in this.
A secret invasion. I wonder what is invading. Of course it's aliens.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. They say this is this version of Andor, and I'm not the first to go, it's not quite that good. I am excited about the fact that we're seeing Samuel L. Jackson at the front, and of course he's always entertaining. And there was, of course, this big question when you saw the trailers. Maria Hill, you're seeing her coming to the forefront. She's always been like a tertiary character in the background. And there was always this question to me, are they going to be able to develop this character now? Are we going to get to see more of her? Or are they going to waste this character? And
they wasted it.
Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah, they did. They wasted that character. And people who've seen this, they're going, oh, dude, that's not even cool for you to say that. That is totally uncool. But, yeah, that's what happened. And the little cliffhangers that they've done have been rather interesting, I will say.
Okay.
Especially this last episode. You're realizing, okay, something weird is going on here. And there's been a question, again, without going into too much detail.
So are we getting these once a week? Or
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, they're not doing what they're doing with Echo, where they're going to put the whole thing out. Yeah, you're getting the once a week. So
Yeah, no binging.
no binging on this one unless you wait to the end, and then you can binge them in a few weeks. But I do like the slow burn of it. I'm still not 100% bought into it, but the acting, of course, is really good. Just Olivia Colman, I never knew that she could be as evil. Especially this last episode, you're like, holy cow. That's some evil stuff. Amelia Clarke is just, I love what they're doing with her character. There's a lot of really interesting, good things going on there. But like I said, right now, I'm not 100% bought into it at this point. I'm still kind of wait and see. It is a bit of a slow burn, but I haven't gotten hooked yet. That's the thing. And I would have thought by now I would have. They've set up a few things, and there are a couple of questions that are like, okay, what exactly does Nick Fury know? And there's, toward the end of this last episode, you're like, I'm sure the question's going to be brought up. Okay, does he know? Because we learned something. We learned a couple of things toward the end of the episode. And it's like, how much of that does Nick Fury actually know? And if he does know, what does that mean for him as a character? That's going to be, well, it depends on what they do with it. If they do something interesting with it, cool. If they don't really explain it, or it goes off to the side, well, that, maybe not so cool, but I guess we'll find out. But yeah, as I say, right now, we're about a third, because I think it's 6 episodes. I think it's a 6-episode miniseries.
Okay.
We're already a third of the way through, and I would have thought we would have gotten to a place where we got to some kind of a twist and a complication, and we haven't really quite got there yet. There's been some action for sure, but anything that's like really hooked me at this point, it's like there's a general menace going on, but And there's this idea of a MacGuffin they introduced in the second episode. But I'm still, like I said, I'm not 100% bought into it yet. And I would have thought by now I would have been. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping by episode 3 that they're able to get that buy-in from me. Like I said, I don't hate it, but I don't feel like at this point that if I hadn't seen it, it wouldn't have been like that big of a tragedy.
Okay.
So it's one of those issues where we've talked about this before. Very often I won't even watch a TV show until it gets to the end to see if it's worth doing it.
Right.
To be honest, right now, as it stands, I feel like there's no rush to see it at this point.
Okay.
And you might wind up dodging a bullet. I might go, Mandy, I know you've got geek-colored glasses, but they're not going to help you here.
Okay.
And I will definitely tell you, the end of episode 1 upset a lot of people.
Uh-oh.
It made people real mad. And again, no spoilers. And the fact that I even brought it up is making people hate me even more again. They're like, oh yeah, why did you even have to mention that ending? Because a lot of people got real mad about it. They got heated. Because, again, without going into too many spoilers, there was something that was promised to you in the trailer that you're like, oh, you're not getting that. Oh, great. And it's a lot more detailed than that. There's other, like I said, without going into spoilers, yeah, it's more upsetting than just that. But, oh boy, I'm again in a situation where not just DC, but Marvel too, they need some momentum. Mm-hmm. And of course, this show is going to lead into the movies. There's going to be an Avengers film based off of some of the stuff that's being set up in this TV show. So it really does need that push. So again, next time we can talk a little bit about episode 3 and we can talk about how I'm feeling about it. And I don't know if you'll have watched any of it by then. You might be looking at me right now going, I don't know if I really want to, I don't know if I want to get into this. But depending on, honestly, what winds up happening, because we haven't gotten a date yet for Doctor Who, it may be November, not sure. I've been hearing some rumors, but we might wind up in a dry spell, and we're starting to get there. And it's not like we hit the brakes. It feels like to me that we are getting to a stop. Mm-hmm. You know, things are starting to chill with the type of the stuff that we're getting. It feels things are starting to just drizzle out, and that's not fun at all. Mm-hmm. But we got 4 episodes left of this show, so maybe it gets better. I guess we'll see.
We shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 192. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.